Welcome back to Counterculture.
I always want to say Station KORN. You remember that from Hee Haw? Yes. Station KORN. And then I go, laughing about it. Those of you who are old enough to remember Hee Haw, you know what I'm talking about.
I loved Hee Haw. Sha-na-na.
A
lot of singing in that. A lot of white t-shirts.
Yeah. Sha-na-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na.
Yes. You know what? I have not gone on YouTube to see if they have
You should find it.
Wow.
Yes. Okay.
That's fantastic.
All right.
I got a visual of Pastor Mark with a white t-shirt, folded up. Yeah, folded up jeans. Fantastic.
Pegged in my pants. I did that for a while when it came back in the late 80s for like 6 months.
You did?
I pegged my pants.
You preached like that.
Okay. Enough of this Enough of this nonsense.
I would like to go to 1 Thessalonians.
Okay.
Not to be confused with 2 Thessalonians.
First Theologians, yes.
Yeah, chapter 2.
Yeah.
Paul is encouraging his children, right? But children go. We were just talking about that song. Now we got to sing the song. Okay. All right, I need you to read verses 10 through 12 for me, please, sir.
You are witnesses, and so is God, of how holy, righteous, and blameless we were among you who believed. For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory.
All right, I got a couple things here, so it'll probably be two countercultures. Depends on how much we pontificate, right? Paul, in verse 10, Paul says something that just looking at it, seems a little prideful, right? Seems a little prideful when you say, you are witnesses, right? Go also how holy and righteous and blameless was our conduct towards you, believers, right?
Puff up.
So we were talking about this last night in Bible study. It was great. It turned into like a 20-minute conversation off of something that I thought was pretty simple. We live in a world today where the culture is constantly telling us to promote ourselves. Mm-hmm. Constantly. You have people that are constantly trying to stick out from other people by what they know or what they've seen or what they've done. But you have Paul here doing similarly in word the same thing. Hey, you know, look at our lives, man. We are blameless. It's got a little bit of that rich young ruler in it, right? Where he says, you know, I've done all these things right. So first of all, explain to me why it is in this section that Paul is not guilty of being prideful in this moment. Why is this not a Paul just strutting, showing his colors, telling us how great he is?
Well, because I think Paul knows, and I think it's in 1 Thessalonians, he will talk about, and the Lord is faithful and he will do it. Paul knows that he's not righteous and holy and blameless on his own. Mm-hmm. And he qualifies it too. He says, you're witnesses, and so is God. In other words, he's saying, I'm standing before you, and I think what the statement he's trying to make there is, he goes, we're trying to live. Yeah. We have done everything we can to live a holy, righteous, and blameless life before you. To our knowledge, we have done that. You're witnesses of it, which also maybe indicates that they have said so. Mm-hmm. Paul, we appreciate how you love God and how you're trying to live for him. I don't sense it's a boast as much as he's saying, you've told us this and we're trying to do this. We're not doing something we're not asking you to do. So we're not asking you to do something that we are not willing to engage ourselves in as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Which I think that right there, first of all,
are we done?
That's a great chasing.
Is that done with this
one?
That's
perfect. That's a great chasing the wind.
Do I need to write that down?
Are you willing? Are you willing to do the things you're asking of other people? It is. We live in this culture where we are consistently asking people to do things that we are unwilling to do. Right? Our politicians talk about having an open border. Right? We're not becoming political while they live in guarded communities and gated communities. Right?
Yeah.
We have people who are constantly...
You open your home and bring in migrants. but we're not going to. You got a bigger house than I do.
Exactly. So we live in this where the
a world of
this is
contradictions.
true. Right. People, even within the church, constantly people are asking of other people what they're not willing to do, or holding each other accountable to a standard that they're not willing to have themselves, which I want to get
What
to
do they
in a
call
second.
that? Rules for thee, but not for me. Isn't that the phrase now? But yes.
But you said something that was interesting in there, besides the chasing the wind thing. You said that that Paul knows, where he knows who's really doing it. Mm-hmm. He knows that it's Christ in him who's doing this, right? Mm-hmm. So we look at today and some of the problems that we have in churches, but in our culture in general. Would it be fair to say that maybe a little part of the problem is we actually have people who believe it is them doing it. Mm-hmm. They do believe that they're doing it all on their own, that they are good people, that they don't really have a need for Jesus, right? I'm the person at this church that Jesus needs to do the least amount of chiseling on. Yeah. I am a finished product, and you all need help. Is it fair to make that statement?
That happens?
Yep.
Yes.
So
yes, it does.
Fantastic, right? So with that in mind, right? How do we not cross over the line and go from having that, hey, that's Jesus in me, to eventually over time that becoming blurry, where all of a sudden it's, yeah, no, I don't really have as much of a need for Jesus. I'm doing this kind of on my own. I'm doing this. I've arrived. I don't struggle with that. One of the phrases that I cringe at all the time is when people tell me they no longer struggle with something. They don't have that struggle. It's amazing how many times people say they don't struggle with something, and then you find out they're struggling with it, or
or another avenue of it.
Exactly.
Because I do think God can help us overcome.
Yep.
Things that may not be another struggle, although that sets us up for it to become another struggle without a doubt. So this doing it on my own is this, and I joke with a friend of mine. He tells me, he goes, I'm a rule follower. I says, well, I'm the youngest. They don't apply to me, and we laugh about it, but it can be very easy. Now, certainly, it is the work of God in us, but it comes through reading Scripture. So when I read Scripture and it tells me I need to forgive Andy, or I need to do this, or I need to do that, okay, that is, I can choose whether I'm going to do that or not. I'm Wesleyan for a reason, because of the free will thing. We believe in we understand the free will thing. I have a choice about whether I'm going to do it, but it's the Holy Spirit nudging me, helping me, empowering me to make that choice. Exactly. And to say, I could just clock you instead of forgiving you. And I was talking to somebody the other day when they were talking about, God's given me this really great line. I've got this really great line I want to use, and I can't wait till I can use it on this person. I said, if I understand what you're talking about, I said, what will happen to you, it happens to me. God ain't going to let you use it. But it's like, God, it's such a good comeback. And he goes, yeah, you ain't using it. You're going to show grace. And I'm like, oh, really, God? How about just a little bit, and then I can go back and apologize? He goes, no, you're not using it.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. But it goes back to also, because, as we've had discussions on here, and I love this because this is describing holiness. And it's describing entire sanctification. Here's where I think there has been, and out of my tradition, there's Wesleyan holiness theology, and then there was for a period of time it was American holiness theology is how I differentiate it, and I could be wrong here, but I think I'm correct. And it was, as we used to say, I don't smoke, drink, or chew, or date girls that do. I made my wife quit chewing because, I wanted to marry a holy woman. No, my wife never chewed. and hopefully she won't watch this. And she'll say, I am so tanked right now.
People are going to tattle on you.
I know. They do all the time. My wife will just laugh because she's a godly woman, okay? And she's put up with me for 32 years. So, but there was this idea of, well, salvation's what God does for me, sanctification's what I do for God. That is not true. Sanctification is what God does for us as well. Yep. He is the one who makes us holy. Paul says that, and God is faithful, and He will do it. He is the one who transforms my life, not me. But we, for 1 Thessalonians 3, Paul says right there, we sent Timothy, who is our brother and God's fellow worker. The word is sunergomai. It means one who works with God. We work with God. God does not force us to conform, but God is working in us. And He says, Andy, I know what you want to do. You really want to blast Mark, but you don't get to. Because I have a better thing. And Andy says, you know what, God, I want to do it your way. Your way is a better way. Help me with this. And God does. And God does. And I think that's where Paul is. We saw that Paul was not the nicest person in the world. Even after, he didn't want Mark to go with him. Who wouldn't want Mark to go with them?
It's the same.
Marks are the life of the party, for crying out loud. But he didn't want Mark to go. But then what did he say? He goes, send Mark. He's valuable to me.
Yeah. Please send me Mark.
Yeah, please send me Mark. Someone has to carry my scrolls. But anyway.
I think this concept, right? It's simple in nature. There's so much in Thessalonians that Paul just puts into little places, right, that are so important to us. Like this concept of we are allowed to say to people, hey, imitate me as I imitate
Christ. Exactly.
Right? There are moments where we can say, I got that right.
Yes.
Right? So I've been through this. Follow me. But we're so scared to death to do that. So maybe finish this up by giving me maybe an example or two that you've seen over time of someone that was worth following, or maybe you've done it in your life where you've been like, hey, I did that pretty well. People might want to pay attention, because we look at that and say that's a pride thing. But there's truth in that. Hey, I trudged through this, made the footprints, right? When it's funny, because when I go horseback riding, right, and we go through tall grass, I don't want to go through my field, right, and have 4 or 5 different pathways. So one person makes the path and everybody stay on the path. So we're only knocking down a certain amount of hay, right? Like we don't want my neighbor guy to find out that his entire hayfield was trampled by horses or cows or things like that, right? So there is a time where we look at things and say, follow my path, because I followed Christ. He led me here. This is a path that's worth following.
Yeah. Well, I think you talk about this boasting thing. I'm just laughing about a joke down here with our friend Mel McGinnis, because one day we're down in Pastor's Prayer, and one of the guys down there kind of leading, he goes, so he says, I want to give you guys an opportunity, you people, an opportunity, because there's some ladies down there too. It's not just all male pastors. And he says, want to give, what is your top spiritual gift? And of course, no one wanted to boast. So someone had to break the ice. So I did. And I said, well, mine's humility. And of course they all just busted out laughing. That broke the ice for him to do it. It is humility, by the way. I've won an award for it. Told everybody about it the next day, and I had to give it back. Anyway,
can't wait till we go viral.
Yeah, I was like, what? I don't. It's funny when we're talking about this holiness thing, and that's what he's talking about. Most people say, well, I don't always get it right, and neither did Paul.
No.
But why do we focus on our imperfections instead of the perfections of what God has done for us? Then I can say, you know what? I did do that one right this time. I did do it right. This morning, I can tell you right now, we were talking about I broke the rules with my dog was 25 minutes digging and something would not come. I was frustrated. She got lectured to the whole way, and she was high, oh, well, you shouldn't have done that. I know. Don't fill the comments with, well, you want to praise them when they come back, even if I know. I get it. I got to go home and I got to apologize to a dog, for crying out loud, who's probably forgotten it, by the way, by now. But, we were talking about that a little bit this morning. Do we have it? Sure we do. But do I get it right sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I get it right. And some days it is blameless. And I think it is a false piety to sit here and say, well, this is why I don't agree with Mellinger's, I don't even call it a definition, but his comments, his comment on sin is that we sin every day in word, thought, or deed. We don't have to.
That's the truth. You do
not have to. That is why Jesus came. We're still in the season of Easter. That's why he came, to defeat sin and death and hell. And Paul says it right here. He goes, you're witnesses of how holy, righteous. Now, how is an interesting word.
Mm-hmm.
How holy? Well, how is relative.
Yep.
There was a couple times I was holy and I got it right, but there was a couple times I didn't. My pastor was probably one of the holiest people I know. I had wonderful people help me. One guy in the church, I remember coming home from college and going and visiting him and his wife, and I said, Brother Lockman, would you pray with me before I go back to college? And he prayed with me, and I opened my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I thought I was in heaven. And he did what old Nazarenes used to say, and Phineas Brzee used to say, the founder of the Church of Nazarene, prayed the glory down.
Yeah.
I opened my eyes because I thought I was in the presence of God and now I was in heaven. And I might as well have been.
Yep.
And did Jim Lockman get it right all the time? No, and he would be the first person to tell you that. But Jim Lockman was holy, blameless, and righteous. He loved God. And God was at work in his life, and he was partnering with God to let God transform him.
Well, isn't that part of the...
And sometimes I get it right, sometimes you get it right.
But part of the holiness and being blameless is even when we get it wrong, we just take ownership.
Yes,
right?
Exactly, and that's holiness.
Right. There's the other aspect. We refuse. We will not let people do that without a huge, humongous consequence, which scares people into,
Yeah.
I can't admit it. I got to fight and fight. I've listened, you've listened. I've listened to people fight with everything they have on the tiniest of things because they are scared to death to be wrong.
Mm-hmm. So I used to work for a parachurch organization that we did a seminar, and one of the things we had talked about is we had one of those poster thingies up on the wall, gigantic post-it note, and we wrote on there, I'd rather be right than, and there was a blank thing.
Yep.
And we would say, what are some answers you have to this? And there'd be, I'd rather be right than wrong.
Yep.
I'd rather be right than shamed, or whatever it was. There was different ones that came out, but here was the one thing that usually came out. We would try to get them to it. I'd rather be right than happy.
Yeah.
I would rather hold my line and not give, not budge, than be happy and say, you know what, maybe I can listen to Andy's point of view and I can be all right.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason there's so many unhappy people around, because they're so worried about being right. Instead of saying, wait a minute, maybe I can learn something. It was kind of interesting because I get a devotion, doesn't come every Monday or whatever, but it's from the Passion Translation, and there's some good stuff in it. And today it came, and it was talking about the idea of learning from other people.
So
we don't want to do that.
We don't, and we take things
because we would rather be right than wrong, or especially happy.
So there's a lot of times where we sit in meetings. Maybe you haven't experienced this, but I sit in meetings and you ask for ideas.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you eventually you're going to get one of the ideas that's going to kind of make itself to the front, and you're going to go with that idea. But unfortunately, what tends to happen is it makes everybody else think that their idea was wrong. Now, your idea wasn't wrong.
It wasn't
not
wrong.
bad.
It's just not the one we feel we're supposed to do.
Right. So
it may come up later and be perfect for what we're doing right now.
Exactly. So somehow we need to get rid of this fear, and I love it because you talk a lot about shame.
Yep.
Right.
That's exactly what it is.
And that is we are so afraid of being wrong because of the shame that goes with it.
Yeah.
Right. And it just destroys all kinds of things. So let's leave it right there. We'll come back, finish this up. I got another thought question for you. But ponder that. Think on that. Chew on all of that. We'll see you next time right here, Counterculture.
Grace and peace.